Welcome to the lead seat. This is Dr. Marilyn Clark, and I do have a returning guest today, Dr. Theresa Carik. Thank you, Theresa, for coming back and visiting with me today. So today, Theresa and I are going to delve into human-centric leadership. So the first thing, Theresa, I want to ask you about is tell me a little bit about what human-centric leadership is and how does it differ from traditional leadership
Yeah,
model?
great. And thanks for having me back. I'm going to
Mhm.
start with that. So, human-centric leadership really is around, it's a leadership style that prioritizes the needs, the well-being, and really the growth of the leader and the employees. It's about creating a very supportive and inclusive environment, and
Mhm.
so that people feel valued and connected. So there's a strong focus on people. It's not that you don't get results, but there's a really strong focus on people and keeping them engaged and motivated, which then translates to business results.
Mhm.
So there's a number of key aspects when it comes to human-centric leadership, and I know we'll go through these one
Mhm.
by one, but the first is really around authenticity. So the idea of being, genuine, transparent, at times vulnerable
Mhm.
as a leader. So again, it really is the leader sharing things and how they're showing up. There's also the interpersonal and social skills of being empathetic and having some sort of emotional intelligence. And so so now you're thinking about the concerns and well-being of others and really listening to them. Also part of this in terms of what people are looking for in terms of how they feel valued is this idea of a flexibility and work-life balance. Again, it feels long ago, but it really wasn't, where things
Mhm.
really got upended. And so there's a need for things to be very adaptive to the conditions, to meet different employee needs. Fourth, I would say, is really this concept of inclusivity, which includes psychological safety, and
Mhm.
that's ensuring that people can feel like they're wanted, their opinions are wanted,
Mhm.
and they can be shared, and also concerns, right? And you can share those without any negative consequences. And then finally, there's this idea of growth and continuous development. So, leaders not only doing it for themselves, but also supporting it for others. And so, again, it's a big difference between, I think, when you think about leadership a long, long time ago, where it was just really business focused, but still we have organizations that can still follow a somewhat traditional model.
Mhm.
And what you'll see is that there's differences between traditional and human-centric leadership in a couple different ways. And one is, we were talking about, like, what's the focus? Like, is
Mhm.
it on people or the tasks? It's not that tasks don't get done, but it's how you're getting it done that's a little bit different. So with the human-centric, we're again thinking about supportive and inclusive environment and that connectedness. Where in traditional leadership, often it's just really focused on deadlines, goals, profitability.
Mhm.
It's more on the results and not really thinking about the impact on people or
Mhm.
how you're including them in meeting those
Mhm.
results and goals.
Okay. Mhm.
Mhm. Uh,
I in thinking about this human-centric leadership, I like the focus of it, but like you and I, over the years we've really studied leadership, all the different models we would say that have come up over the years, the transactional, the transformational, the servant leadership. And I like this concept, but I kind of want to push back a little bit and get your thoughts because on um, is this something with all these other different models that we've gone through over the years or um, folks have done, how does human centric kind of stand out, although I understand it's about the people, but how is it going to stand out when a leader has to make those hard calls? How would they work with that human centric I guess, attitude when they have to make hard calls, because we do sometimes have to make the hard calls in business.
So
So,
absolutely, absolutely. So, it's always about then how the message gets delivered. So there's a decision
mhm,
making on it, right?
mhm,
And so, the differences between human centric and traditional is around human centric often involves the input of others
mhm,
and collaboration and some ownership, where traditional it's there's no input. So even when there are business decisions, so if I'm a direct report, that doesn't mean you're going to ask me for my opinion, but you'd like to think that even when making the final decisions, that the leaders are actually talking, right? And thinking about, the needs of the business as it relates to people and roles and how, and then when decisions are made, how are we actually going to communicate this? And
mhm,
what support are we going to provide afterwards? I think we all have horror stories, maybe not personally or those of others,
mhm,
where gosh, a person showed up to badge into work and their badge didn't work at all. Like they to badge in and it didn't work. And that's how they found out that they lost their job, right?
mhm.
That's not very human centric,
Right.
right? And especially again, you think about the environment. Job changes are happening either on your own or not on your own. It's just the nature of the beast, and there's just so much going on. Can we treat people with dignity and with respect
Mhm,
and support
mhm,
when we have to make those difficult decisions?
mhm. Okay. I wonder, I'm thinking, because I'm really trying to get a better handle on the human centric side. And if leaders, if I'm understanding, it's across the board, meaning leaders across the board being human centric with each other to support the business decision and the business growth. And then we're also looking as me being, so I'm not siloing myself as leaders across the organization. And then is it also where, as an independent leader, my team, so to speak, I am using these same things uh, to as in the way that I treat my employees that work for me.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
It
it's
is,
kind of across and also down.
yeah, it is a cultural thing,
Okay.
really.
Ah.
If you think about it, it's not like it, I mean, you're in any organization, you're probably going to have pockets of, right, different kinds of
Mm-hmm.
leaders, but this is an organization embracing
Mm-hmm.
this type of approach, right?
Okay.
That they really do again value people. They want them to feel engaged and connected. They go out of their way to do that. They make opportunities for development. There's constant communication, as transparent as you can be.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with the selection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, of
Okay.
other leaders to support that
Mm-hmm.
type of culture. But absolutely, it's the organizations that can embrace it and actually permeate that, and it's embedded in their competencies and their values and their vision. Like it has a very different feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I was a senior leader and I'm like scratching my head and saying, Theresa, I really love this. I think that, and I know how long culture changes takes, it's over time. I'm scratching my head. What would be maybe a first step if I wanted to bring my senior team together, my executive team together, and us kind of powwow around how we can move towards this a culture of more, human centric leadership.
Yeah.
What would you
Yeah.
recommend?
Yeah. So, a good first step in when you're pulling your leaders together
Mhm,
is just deciding like it's inclusivity broader, right? So that's almost like a good first step. It's like this is the kind of thing that we want our organization to be like and to feel like, and so on. And so, and there's lots of different things that then go into it. So I think about like the flexible and the flexibility and the work-life balance and things like that. And so it's a matter of figuring out like, what does, how do we keep people engaged and included in everything? So, what and feeling good. So, what are the work arrangements that we can allow, right? Because it's now all over the board. Some people are completely remote, some are hybrid, some are all in the office, and you can have all these mixtures, right? Within one team, even.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that even on it's you think about what's controllable in your world. So, if how can you make everybody feel included and having the say of what works for them, but included at the same time, right? So, do people who at work in the office versus out of the office, do they have the same access to materials? Are they hearing the same things? What are the things we do that can build connections, right, within the team? And again, regardless of where you're sitting, how can we reward people, or like what's the recognition that we can provide? So, as the broader leader, if they agree on this, then it's a matter of, okay, what can you start doing? Like, I feel like you start then working in your own worlds and
Okay.
agreeing like across, like, this is what we're going to be trying to do with it. And then you start building some momentum around that to then you can further embed it in your organization, right? So a culture change always starts with those few key leaders who embrace it and they create the groundswell. And believe me, I've seen it where a certain leader has some great reputation and others know about it, right? Others know, and
Yeah.
you get that rep, and you see the opposite too. So that's the other thing. So.
Right. One of the core principles you said is about empathy and emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence and leadership, a lot of times, it can be a slippery slope or, a teeter-totter kind of thing. So how could leaders develop and practice empathy through emotional intelligence?
Yeah, yeah. So, so a lot of that is it gets to almost starting again with yourself and knowing your own style, triggers, reflecting on things that go well or situations that don't go well, how people are reacting to the situation or how you're saying things or how you're coming across. So I'm always about like, okay, start with yourself, right?
Right.
To
Okay.
figure things out, and then you can work on your self regulation of those things, like the emotions and how you're like coming across in situation. Are you calm versus impulsive? And then you start thinking about the social skills and other things like empathy to bring it together and start using it and leveraging it for others that you interact with. And so, as you work to collaborate, as you work to ask questions, to involve people, ask them their opinions, their ideas, their concerns, that empathy part is a true component. That's part of, the listening, right? And so it's acknowledging, what's been shared, feeling some sort of, you don't necessarily have to agree with it, but recognizing that whatever is being shared that could be frustrating or make you happy or whatever that person is sharing, it makes that person feel heard. But it's always, again, thinking about like, yeah, I can see that and I'm going to give words to it. And that means I'm going to give it like life. I'm acknowledging it. And that's what people want. There's nothing worse than when you share something and the leader just kind of goes right on, right? They
Right.
just kind of continue on with whatever they were talking
Again.
about, as opposed
Right.
to saying, yeah, that really stunk. Like I can see that. Or man, I could see how that was such a great experience for you. Just those little things.
Mm-hmm.
It builds a connection. And again, you demonstrate that emotional intelligence.
Intelligence. Yeah. I can see, a leader, not, I won't say just blow you off, but doesn't get back to you about something and it could be something, an idea you came up with. It could be a situation, a problem I need to work through. And it's like the leaders are so busy with what they need to get done that
Mhm.
the frustration bubbles up from the team member
Yep.
because they feel like they're not being heard or valued. So that kind of, you're right, leads into the active listening piece of that. And
Mhm.
so how would you describe how a leader can start to really feel, or a leader can start to really be an active listener? Um, what is maybe a key one thing or one or two things that they can do that will give them, that will show that they are active listening, or because it is a skill. Yeah.
It is. And so many people, even people I coach, and I'm sure same with you, so they'll say,
Right.
"Oh, I'm a great listener. I'm a
Right.
great listener." And my
Yeah.
response is usually, ask your significant other. Right? Check that. You might want to check that. So, because to your point, it is really, really tough. And
Mm-hmm.
so, a couple like just real like low-hanging fruit in terms of things to do. Um, the first is just really give undivided attention
Mm-hmm.
and not be distracted. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even think about it on all like remote meetings and so on. You could be doing like two or three other things, right? When you're
Right.
on the phone,
Right.
and no one might not know. Like I could be checking my phone. I could
Right.
be like, waving to someone behind me. I could be going through a drive-through. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have any idea, right?
Right.
So really focusing on the person, not paying attention to anything else, undivided attention. That's
Mm-hmm.
like that's like one of the basic things. It's hard to do. So,
Yes.
but that's the first thing, and people will know it. And leaders, I will, as an aside, like that was one of the strengths of Bill Clinton. Like people who had met him would say you felt like when you were in a crowd of 1,000 people, he was like so focused on you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. The other thing that really is, it's the whole thing of reflecting back, or almost parroting back what
Right.
you heard. Because so as someone's talking, most people are thinking this is my response. Like they're still talking, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond. That's not listening either, because you're
Right.
going to miss something.
Right.
So often starting with, so I heard, if I understand you correctly, this is what you said,
Mm-hmm.
and then repeat back. And you don't have to say word from word, but you can paraphrase.
Mm-hmm.
That also gives the chance for the person to say, yeah, that's right. No, you're missing something. You're completely off base, whatever. And it can really then take any misunderstandings
Mm-hmm.
off the table. That's where, I mean, gosh, again, we've all have examples of this where you go down the road and suddenly, and you're like, wait a minute, you realize you're not on the same page because
Right.
you start on the same page.
Right.
You
Mm-hmm.
start veering. But those two things, they take effort and they take some time, because
Yes.
again, when you paraphrase back, that's time, but it's going slow to move
Mm-hmm.
fast,
Mm-hmm.
making sure you're on the same page
Right.
before making
Right.
mistakes later.
Yeah, one of the things that I liked, that I try and do to really hone on in my active listening, is watching body language and facial expressions. And then kind of also with the parroting back, I saw you frown when you said this, or I saw you light up when you said this,
Mhm.
because that's all inclusive. That also is inclusive of active listening, is how it is, not just what came out of the mouth, but how it came out of the mouth, the tone,
Yeah.
the inflections, all of that also speaks, I think, to that active listening piece, as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know you did touch about, you had said a little bit earlier about, the remote and the hybrid. And, so I wanted to touch a little bit on that flexibility, under this model of leadership. So, in adapting a human centric leadership principle to remote and hybrid work environments, what are some things that, because what I'm seeing or hearing, I should say, is that a lot of organizations now are really pushing for people to come back into the office. I'm hearing that people want to come back into the office. And then I'm also hearing that people still are on the I want to never will go back into the office. So when it comes to, if I am that being that human centric leader, how am I going? What are some things that I could do with my team to make sure everybody's happy, still follow the company policy, right?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And still maintain connection and engagement.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I personally am a firm believer in-person interactions have a lot of power. It doesn't
Mhm,
mean I have to be there every day, right? And everyone has to, but there's a quickness to it. You get creativity, you get innovation. You don't have to be in meetings all day. There's again that just connection that naturally builds. So organizationally, though, you have to understand like why is the organization asking us to come back and what are the parameters around that, and you can understand that, right? Because a lot of it is around the collaboration and creativity and so on, and um and it has suffered. It has suffered with everyone being remote. Things are taking longer and things you can't just as easily think and be creative. So if you understand what the company line is, then leaders like working within it. And so, you know, uh, finding out what people's own preferences are and the reasons behind it, right? Having that transparent conversation,
mhm,
with each of your team members, to understand where they might be coming from, and again, listen and empathize with it. So share what you can
mhm,
and share the rationale.
mhm,
Um, as the hope is that you can actually do some sort of hybrid model of some sort, rather than mandating everybody come in every single day and so on. And so then when you bring people in some hybrid way, again, finding maybe what days may be best. Again, you use a phrase, making everybody happy. Um,
okay.
I think you did, and it's just, and it makes me, it's just like at home, like it's not a democracy, right? So um, and right? So somebody has to make decisions at some point, but
Right.
even with decisions that you don't like we talked about earlier with being let go, when
Uh-huh.
you know the rationale and you're treated well and you feel
Mhm,
heard,
mhm,
you're more accepting
mhm,
of
mhm,
the answer. So it goes the
mhm,
same thing with this. So I might want to be totally remote, but okay, so we're going to come in 2 days.
mhm.
Okay. And it's 2 days that typically, no one wants to come in Monday and no one wants to come in Friday. So,
Right.
let's
Yeah.
just be honest. So we're not going to make it those days. And when people come in, we're going
Mhm,
to make sure we're going to always have, because
mhm,
the other piece that people complain about is when I come in,
mhm,
either no one else is there or like the stuff we did could have been done online. And so
mhm.
you have, it's being very then purposeful in
Right.
terms of the time that you have together, and
Right.
food always works as well. But at some point it's, you
Mhm,
do all the right things up front
mhm,
as much as you can, and
mhm,
then make decisions
mhm,
considering as much as you can, and then communicating it
mhm.
clearly.
Okay.
Someone might not be happy,
Right.
right? But is
Right.
if they feel heard and maybe there are some compromises made,
Mhm.
that's a little different.
Okay. let's talk about inclus inclusivity
Mhm.
and why that's critical with human-centric leadership and the ways that the organization can promote and support that diversity.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, so inclusivity, uh, is really important in terms of it's this idea that again that people feel valued and
Mhm,
respected, and here we're really talking about also included, right? So they, people, you know sense that of belonging,
mhm,
and that my ideas are wanted, and I can also be different as well, right? And
right.
have differing thoughts,
Mhm,
and it's okay.
mhm,
So it's in doing that, people feel safe to share different thoughts and other concerns. Um, and all of this then leads to really engagement, right? So if I feel like I'm valued, and we can have some really good conversations, and concerns are being addressed
mhm.
and so on, then it makes me want to stay and continue and be committed to
Right.
the organization. So, we talked a little bit earlier around like so it's a cultural thing, and so it starts with hiring the right people, right? People who recognize this as it's important,
Mhm,
that they support it. They
mhm,
have examples of supporting it, and also they are committed to it, right? Particularly if it's in line with the culture.
mhm,
Uh, another thing around inclusivity is recognizing it's a continuous process. So, it's not this one and done. You do one program and that's it, and then you got everything's good.
mhm,
It has to be integrated into the culture, and with that, then you also assess, and how practices are going. What do you need to modify in it? What's not working well, and so as a leader, if I am being authentic and transparent and vulnerable, being a good role model for this,
mhm,
it should help lead others feel more comfortable, right? You ask questions,
mhm,
sometimes recognizing that questions might be better asked, or certain individuals might be more comfortable in separate situations, one-on-one versus team.
mhm,
When you are in group discussions, it's actually inviting different perspectives,
mhm,
to brainstorm, especially
mhm,
embracing it, recognizing, like a lot of different perspectives, they all have value, they all bring value
mhm,
to it. Um, when and then you start thinking about like individually, and so people where there's diversity of just like who we are and what we believe in our background, and so being curious about that and learning from
mhm,
other individuals as a leader, that is usually very helpful.
mhm,
Squashing anything where if you feel like someone's not being respected
mhm,
and valued, in the environment, like actually, taking care of that.
mhm,
And again, just even for yourself, just I find just the curiosity and openness
mhm.
to it. I think as no one grew up the same. You
Right.
could look the same, but you have very different backgrounds
Right.
or experiences, and that shapes us, right?
Right.
For good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Right.
But it does shape us, and it does help us provide different perspectives, which it can often be more helpful than not when if you really think about it,
Mhm,
when you share those different thoughts. And
mhm,
so those are a number of different things that leaders can do with
mhm.
the team.
One of the strategies that when I've worked with teams sometimes doing some team coaching, one of the strategies that I have is having in with the team and the leader in the room, and having the leader, whatever, let's say that's on the agenda, whatever we're going to have to discuss today, it's like the leader kind of steps back and lets the group interact with each other, and with the brainstorming. So the leader is not, she's allowing that, that creativity, that honesty with among the group members, and they're staying, sitting to the side, listening as the group interacts and comes up maybe with, solutions, or, whatever the agenda may be, or whatever they're working on, or, you know, um, statuses of what a project is, and they just sitting back and letting them interact within themselves, and it gives that feeling of inclusiveness without the leader, me looking to the lead, or the team members looking to the leader to say, what should we do?
Yeah.
More of letting them. Now, true enough, at the end of the day, the leader will be the one, to make the final decision. But it does, what I have found in using that strategy with some teams is it kind of starts to bring, the quiet ones out,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? And the ones that are, I would say, more open, it gives them, they start to learn how to listen more, how to
Yes.
listen more. So it is about, diversity, it is about inclusion, but it's a way that we can be both, because we got diversity of thought. What ideas do you have? Each one has their own ideas, and we're all being inclusive in the fact that we are all sharing what we think.
Yes.
It could be, and the leader is just letting them kind of lead themselves through that process.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've tried. It works. It's sometimes, you gotta you still have to kind of manage it. And because it's sometimes a very new kind of strategy, and people are timid, I
Yes.
would guess it would be would be the word, can be very timid but then in coaching the leader through that as well, and and how to run a meeting like that is also, to which they may not think it's inclusive and diversity, but it really is.
Right.
So understanding that mindset. Have you ever done something like that with a team?
Yes, I have. And exactly to your point, it's like watching and you want to make sure that they don't feel like they're in a fishbowl with
Right.
it, but in some ways, but you're right. Like you see different people step up, you see different ideas, you see things that can work well and some things that don't work as well. And so what I've done, and I would encourage leaders to do, is that when they like jot down things that in terms of feedback, right,
Uh-huh.
that you can provide the team as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and if there are things individually, especially for those that are quiet, it's giving them the encouragement, like even just in a one-on-one meeting. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
have great ideas. Like, look
Right.
what, what have, asking the individual to reflect on things,
Mm-hmm.
and you can really then kind of build these muscles. So
Right.
so that it doesn't feel so strange. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want them to feel like they're being you watched and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but that is part of it because you do want them to grow.
Right. Right.
Stay tuned for part 2 with Dr. Carik as we continue to discuss human-centered leadership.